Welcome back to the channel. It's the end of September here in Florida, which means prime kayaking season. In today's video we are going to go through the steps you need to take to service your trailer wheel bearings. Some of the tools you will need to complete this job are a cordless impact gun, socket for your lug nuts, rubber hammer, channel lock pliers, side cutters, grease gun, and a wheel bearing packer.
Alright, so we've got the front of our trailer chalked so that when we jack it up it doesn't roll away. So for this first step we're going to take our floor jack, position it under the frame, and what we're looking to do here is just get that tire off the ground. We're going to take our jack stand, place it underneath the back of the frame, lift it up, and we're just going to want to lower the trailer down onto that jack stand. That'll keep us safe just in case anything happens or the trailer shifts, it won't fall on us. Alright, so for this step here, you're going to want to have some way to take the tires off. You don't have to have an electric impact, but it does make the job a lot easier. We're going to need to have a pair of channel lock pliers, a pair of side cutters, and then a decent amount of paper towels because it does get messy from here. So our first step, we're going to go ahead and get these lug nuts off. Set those up on the fender. Pull your tire off, it should slide right off. Set that to the side. Next step, you're going to want to take your pliers here and adjust them, and you want to grab the outside of the bearing cover here and grip it and just kind of wiggle it back and forth until that cap pops off. Alright, so after the bearing cap is off, we've got a castle nut here that holds this whole hub assembly on, and then there's a cotter pin here that holds that castle nut from spinning. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your side cutters here, and we're going to bend this castle nut kind of flat, push it down a little bit here, and you just want to take your side cutters. We're not trying to cut this, we're just trying to pry this out. We're going to set that off to the side. Next, we have to remove this castle nut. You can get a pair of a wrench that'll go on there, or a socket, but these are actually designed to be pretty loose, almost finger tight. So we're going to take our pliers here, and with minimal effort, this should pop off, just like that. We're going to want to go ahead and remove this castle nut, and there should be a washer behind this as well. We're going to pull that off, pull this washer out of here, and these get pretty dirty, which is why, full of grease, this is why I recommend having a good stack of paper towels. Now we can pull the hub off of the spindle. There is a bearing in here, so you want to kind of have your hand underneath to catch that bearing. I'm going to pop that front bearing out. Now we can remove the hub. On the back side of this hub, you're going to find a seal, and behind that seal is another bearing, and we need to pull that bearing out of there. So we're going to slide that hub back on. You're going to take your castle nut, and you want to thread that on, not all the way, but a couple threads. And what we're going to do is we're going to slide this hub off of here kind of at a downward angle, so that that inner bearing catches on this castle nut and pulls the assembly out of the back. So you're going to need to have a little bit of effort on this, and it's going to take a couple tries, but you're going to have the bearing that will pop off, and then the seal behind there, and the hub in your hands. So after we've removed the inner bearing and seal from the hub, we're going to go ahead and unthread that castle nut. Set that off to the side. We're going to pull our inner bearing out, set that there, And then we're going to pull our seal out and set that aside as well. Next, we want to take another paper towel and we want to clean off this spindle and clean off the back here. And what we're going to be looking for on this spindle is any type of discoloration. So this should be a nice chrome color. There should be no rust on this if it was working properly. And you should not see any type of bluing or any rainbowing or anything like that. So taking a look at that spindle there, that looks like it's in really great shape. I don't see any scoring or anything on this surface, which is where that seal rides. And this is a nice clean color with no rust or any discoloration there. Next, we want to take our bearings and we want to clean the old grease off of there as best as you can. And with this, we're going to be looking for the same thing. So we're going to be looking for any discoloration on this surface. These should be a nice chrome color. I like to put my finger in there and spin this. And I want to make sure I don't hear any type of grinding sound or any grittiness or anything that would indicate that sand or debris is in that bearing. So this one feels really good. And I don't see any discoloration here on the surface of the bearing. We're going to grab that rear bearing as well. Clean that off. And these don't have to be 100% clean. When we pack these full of grease, it's going to get the rest of that old grease out. But again, I don't see any discoloration here on the surface of the bearings here. And when I spin this, I don't feel any type of grittiness or anything catching any of the bearing surfaces. So these are in really good shape here. All right, so I've gone ahead and moved everything up here to the workbench just to make it a little bit easier. I've already cleaned off my washer, the castle nut, and then our hub here. I went ahead and got most of the nasty grease out of the inside of this and clean the bearing surfaces. And again, you want to look for any type of discoloration or any bluing or rainbowing on the races inside of this hub. Taking a look at both sides of this, I don't see any discoloration. This looks like it's in really good shape. So these races do not need to be replaced. Now the first thing I'm going to do on my bearing cap is this Zerk fitting where you would normally put grease in is very rusty and is not usable anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and take a 1/4 inch ratchet here and we're going to pop that Zerk fitting out of there. Discard that. And then I just went to an AutoZone, but you can go to any auto parts store and go near their wheel bearing grease and you can get new Zerk fittings. There are different sizes of them, so it's a good idea to take it out ahead of time and bring that with you so you can match it up. We're going to go ahead and pop a new Zerk fitting in there. And then we just want to tighten that up and get that nice and snug. All right, next we want to pack these wheel bearings with new grease. There's a couple different ways you can do this. I have a wheel bearing packer. It makes the job a lot easier. I've got it filled with a nice high temp grease. You definitely want to make sure you're using high temp grease. If your trailer goes into the water for any reason, if you have to back your trailer into the water, you want to make sure you get a marine grade grease. That way it's a little bit more water repellent and will stop that spindle and things like that from oxidizing. My trailer never backs into the water because it's a kayak trailer, so I just went with a high temp wheel bearing grease. These tools are really easy to use. It's got a cap that comes off and that's just kind of a dust cap. This middle section here unscrews. We're going to set that off to the side for right now. And then inside there's a cone shaped piece of plastic, and then underneath that is the grease. Okay, now to use this tool it's really easy. What you want to do is you want to take your bearing and you want to go cone side down or tapered side down, and we're just going to kind of nestle that right in there. And then we're going to take our cap. We don't have to thread it back on. You just want to push it on there. And then it is a little bit hard to push this down, but basically what you want to do is kind of push and wiggle at the same time. And what we're going to be looking for, you can see that the old used grease is starting to come out of the top of the bearing. And we're going to want to push this down until we see a nice steady stream of red grease coming out of there. So we're starting to get a little bit of red color here, but there's still quite a bit of old dirty grease in there. So we want to continue to push this down. And then as you can see, we've got red grease coming out of there. So we know that the old grease has been cleared out of this bearing. We've got nice fresh grease in there. So we want to go ahead and pull this bearing out and set that off to the side. Now I'm going to take that rear bearing and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to place it there and center it. Take our top cone and work that down. I find if you kind of rotate it around as you're pushing, it helps to get that grease up a little bit more. So this one here has got a lot of old grease in it, so we want to continue to push that down. And again, what we're looking for is red grease to start to come out. I'm going to go ahead and push this down one more time, just to kind of get a little bit more of that old nasty grease out. You will find as you're pushing, a little bit of grease is going to leak around the O-ring that's there. That's okay. We're going to use that here in a minute to lube our hub up before we put it back on the spindle. So we're going to go ahead and press this down one more time. All right. And we've got a decent amount of red grease that has come out. I'm going to take some of this old grease that's on here and kind of set that off to the side. And all right, so now that we've got our bearings packed full of nice fresh grease, I want to take our hub here, and this is the front of the hub, this is the back of the hub here. So I'm going to take a little bit of that grease that squeezed out of here and just kind of grab it with my finger. You want to take and just rub that around the race here. Okay, just get a nice good coating in there. We're going to take our bearing, put that back in there. Then we're going to take our new oil seal and we want to get that back installed. So easiest way to do this is kind of center that on there. Take a soft mallet or a rubber mallet, and it doesn't take a lot of force, but you kind of want to go in a circular motion. And what you're looking for is for that seal to sit flush to the back of that hub. Next, we're going to flip the hub over. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that grease. And we're going to lube that race up as well. We don't want a dry surface there when we put that bearing in. And now we're going to take this back down to the spindle. So we're back down here at the spindle. Just like we don't want dry bearing races, we don't want a unlubricated spindle before we slide that hub back on. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that grease that's on the backside of that bearing and just rub it on that spindle. All right, once we've got that lubricated, we're going to take our hub, slide that onto the spindle, and just make sure it seats back there. We're going to take our front bearing now and kind of center the hub there and slide that on. We're going to take our washer and put our washer back on. And then we want to take that castle nut and thread that on. Now this time we want to thread it all the way up to the washer. And then you want to kind of give that hub a couple spins. Okay, and what you're going to find is the castle nut's going to kind of loosen there, But what we're looking to do is seat the bearings. All right, next we want to tighten this castle nut down. So if you remember when we took this off, this wasn't very tight, and we want to kind of put it back on the same way. If this castle nut is on there too tight, you're going to put too much pressure on those bearings, and it's going to burn them up. They're going to get really, really hot, and they're gonna cook the grease, and you're going to have an issue with this hub and spindle overheating, and that could lead to some type of mechanical breakdown as you're driving. So what you want to do is you want to take your channel locks again and just kind of lock it onto that nut. Now what I do is I spin this hub as I'm tightening this, and I want to kind of work that back and forth a couple times, because what I'm looking to do is seat those bearings and make sure that this hub is kind of sitting on there super tight. The other thing you're going to be looking for is in this spindle, there's a hole that cotter pin went through, and we want to make sure that the notches in the castle nut line up with that. So right now, my hole in my spindle is right here over this notch, so I won't be able to get a castle nut in there. So if I back this off this way, this is way too loose, and there's a little bit of movement in that hub. So what I want to do is take this and just move that just a little bit and make sure that my hole is available for the cotter pin. And you should be able to spin your hub pretty freely. There should be a little bit of resistance there, but it should spin relatively freely. Okay. Next, you want to take a cotter pin. You want to make sure you're using a new cotter pin, and you're going to want to slide that into the hole that you have there, and then just kind of tap that down with your side cutters there. Bend that tab up like that, and then you can cut that off a little bit at the bottom, and then bend that in like that. Okay. So again, we've got a hub that spins relatively freely. We've got our cotter pin back in there. Last thing we want to do is take our bearing cover. We want to slide that back on. Take your soft hammer again and just tap that on as you're spinning the hub. Make sure that's seated on there very well. I like to kind of clean everything up here. Make sure there's no grease on anything. All right, and the last thing we want to do is we have new grease in our bearings, but we need to fill that cavity back up with grease. So you're going to want to take a standard grease gun like this. Slide your grease gun onto that Zerk fitting, and we want to just pump grease into that hub. Okay, want to do about, I don't know, 10, 12 pumps, something like that. We're just looking to fill that cavity back up with grease. You'll start to feel some resistance on the handle as the grease gets in there. And then because this is a new Zerk fitting, that does fit on there very tightly. I like to leave a little bit of grease on that Zerk fitting just to prevent rust buildup and things like that. Next, all you got to do is put the tire back on. All right, before we continue with the bearing service, I want to take a minute to talk about tires and tire safety. So this trailer is new to me. I purchased it about 3 or 4 months ago with the Kayaks, which is one of the reasons why I'm servicing the bearings, because I don't know how long they've been without service. I want to talk about tire safety because a lot of trailer failure, especially when you're on a trip, is going to be from your tire having some type of catastrophic failure, a blowout or something of that nature. So on the surface, these tires they look like they're in great shape. It's still got all the nubs on it from when it was produced. If you look at the tread of the tire, this tire's still got plenty of tread. I mean, on the surface, this thing looks almost brand new. Now, one thing you want to look for, not only on trailer tires, but on passenger car tires as well, is you want to look and see when this tire was made. Tires have a shelf life. You know, they may have plenty of tread, but over time, this rubber dries out. The tire starts to deteriorate, it starts to dry rot, and that could lead to tire failure. So every single tire that's produced, whether it's a trailer tire like this or a tire that's on your vehicle, is going to have a DOT code. The number that we're most focused on here is this one right here, 2217. All right, and what that means is your first two digits are going to be the week that it was manufactured. So this tire was manufactured in the 22nd week, and the last two are the last two digits of the year that it was manufactured. So this tire was made the 22nd week of 2017. So this tire is 6 years old, and you want to replace tires as they get up there in age. I like to replace them at 5 years old. As part of the service today, we're going to go ahead and be replacing the tires and switching from a painted steel wheel over to a galvanized wheel. Now, what I did was I took one of these assemblies off. I took it to a local trailer store and let them know that I needed a new wheel and tire, and they were able to find my bolt pattern, get my tire size, and match up what I needed. And we are swapping over to a galvanized wheel and tire combo. Now, one thing you want to be careful of when you are purchasing new trailer tires or a trailer and wheel combo like we have here is you want to look at these DOT numbers as well and see how old this tire is. Again, this tire looks brand new. It's still got the painted markings on it here. This tire has never been on the road, but that doesn't mean that this tire is not old. This tire could have been sitting on the shelf for years at that tire store waiting for somebody to purchase it. So we want to find that DOT number on this tire as well. And we can see that this tire was made in the 19th week of 2022. So as we're filming this video, we are in September of 2023. So this tire is almost a year and a half old today as I purchased it. This was the newest wheel and tire combination I could find. I bought two of these that were manufactured in the 19th week of 2022, but you want to keep an eye on that when you are purchasing these, because this could be a 3 or 4 year old tire and look like a brand new tire. All right, so we've got everything back together here. So our last step is we're going to take our wheel and tire assembly, slide that back onto the studs, take our lug nuts, then we're going to take our cordless impact here, and we don't want to hammer these down. We want to kind of snug them up first. All right, and then we're going to go through and we're going to tighten them. Now, if you're using an electric impact, you don't want to over tighten these things. If you do end up having a tire failure on the road, you're probably not going to have an electric impact with you. You're going to be taking it off with a breaker bar or something of that nature. So just keep that in mind when you're tightening these, that you don't want to be outside of the road with a lug nut that's tightened to 200 foot-pounds. It will be very difficult to get that off. So I'm just going to take this. Lastly, we want to make sure that the tire is properly inflated. I already did that, but this tire here is rated for 590 pounds at 60 pounds of pressure. I know my trailer weighs, with the kayaks and gear that we carry, my trailer weighs right at 500 pounds. So I have these inflated to 50 PSI. If I were going to carry more weight or maybe an additional kayak or something on top, something like that, I would increase that pressure to the 60-pound max, just to make sure that that's safe. From there, we can raise the trailer back up with the jack, take the jack stand off, and we are good to go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and lift the trailer up just enough to get it off that jack stand. Go ahead and pull our jack stand out. Set that off to the side. And slowly lower the trailer back down. And that is a completed job. Thank you very much for viewing my video, and we will see you in the next one.